Hi, I'm Suze Shaner with Sage Leadership Strategies, and I'm your host today of Community Forum. And I have the great pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Adam Berk, who is a internist physician at a major university hospital in New York, and also by avocation a musician. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you.
Good to have you here. So, want to talk about a little bit about medicine, a little bit about music, and the relationship between the two. So, I want to start off by saying clearly, you've always been passionate about music, but you made a career choice to pursue medicine. So, to be a doctor by day. So, can you take us through a little bit about how you came upon that career choice initially? Because I know from talking to you that you got into two very different high schools. One was Bronx High School of Science, and the other was Music and Art High School. Those are very different.
They are
So,
very.
yeah.
So
What
I
happened
was
there?
I was in the unique position of being raised by two professional musicians. So the insight into what the life of a musician might be was something I had access to at a very young age. So I understood what it took to make a living in music, and what you might have to do was not necessarily your dream or ideal job to get to where you wanted to be. And I always thought, well, if I want to raise a family, have children, have any kind of financial stability, maybe I could get another kind of job and do music on the side. And so every decision I made was kind of calculated with that in mind.
So, you made this choice in what, like ninth or 10th grade, basically to pursue this different track because you got into both these very different kinds of schools. So you were thinking, that's pretty amazing. At such a young age, you were thinking very critically like that.
I actually had a conversation very recently with a childhood friend of mine, somebody I was in Little League with. And he said, how could you have made that decision at 14 to go to Bronx Science instead of music and art? You could have gone to music and art and gone pre-med too. And I said, yeah, but I don't know if my foundation in science would have been as well-rounded. And what if I didn't get into medical school? What if I wanted to do something else? Would Bronx Science give me the background that would be more competitive to get into a better school than music and art? And so I went with it.
Well, that is pretty wise for a 14-year-old. And it also sounds like, given how you were raised and from basically what you said, is you saw your parents struggling. So you were like, I don't want to struggle.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So then you pursue this medical route. So how did you stay current and fresh with your music while, because medical studies are pretty rigorous, while you were pursuing that career path?
So the desire to play music comes from within, and it's not something you can manually turn off. And so I looked for ways to continue to be creative within the limits that I was given. So as a undergraduate pre-med, what little time I did have, I channeled into either writing or putting a band together or performing. And of course, you have to be somewhat limited in how often you can perform and how often you can rehearse. But I took that into account and actually put together a six-piece band, not too dissimilar from the one I still play in. The
So
demands, the
yeah, go
demands
ahead.
time-wise during medical school, excuse me, were more intense, and so I needed to be a lot more focused with writing and recording rather than playing out, because there just wasn't time to create bands and looking up venues to play in medical school.
Yeah. So when you were in medical school, you were writing songs and recording your songs.
Yeah.
Did we hear any of them on the airways or what?
Uh, well, I mean that's the subject of another tire talk. We're now talking about the 80s, the decade of the electric drum machine, the synthesizer, disco, hip hop, what have
Right.
you. And so you're not going to hear what I was writing at that time, because I'm sort of the guy who was born 10 years too late. And if I was 18 in 1968, would have been a lot different.
Okay. Okay. Well, so then you pursue this rigorous medical career, um, and and you were in the thick of it. Let's just fast forward with COVID. You were on the front lines with COVID. I'm just curious, what was it like for you being on the front lines, and what did you personally experience that had an effect on you and maybe change you in any way? And
Well, you always hope that you don't live through a disease state that goes into the history books. Uh, that said, this will be, the pandemic of the century. Hopefully, no more. Um, you have to respect the science. Again, we were dealing with something that the general public had not had. The immune response was sorely lacking. So we were seeing very sick people very quickly, many requiring hospitalization and emergency care. And we didn't have any tools uh, to treat this yet. So you had to use all of your training, and we needed more uh, public health boots on the ground to sort of restore some order and restrict commerce, restrict public access to crowds in indoor spaces. And eventually, we were able to identify that this was a respiratory-borne illness that could be quarantined with N95s and spacing and being outdoors. And when the meds came along, that was great.
yeah. So, any lessons learned for you? I mean, obviously, it was an unprecedented time in your history of practicing medicine.
Uh, Respect the science.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um,
don't don't let politics sway you.
yeah. What's been your greatest rewards and challenges with your work as a doctor?
Uh, I think a lot of doctors are afraid of continuity of care because of all the responsibilities that are built into it. But I think they're missing the gratification of seeing people through long term illnesses and seeing that they have lived to full life expectancies and seeing multiple generations of people all under your care. I'm seeing people I've taken care of for 35 years now, third generation of people coming to see me. So there's nothing that can replace the longitudinal knowledge of these people and their lives.
That's incredible. You have some patients that have been with you for 35 years and their families. That must be very rewarding.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, we're at the stage now where we see each other and we hug. It's just,
Oh, that's so sweet.
yeah.
Well, okay, so let's talk about medicine and music. So I'm curious, how does medicine maybe inform your music, and maybe how does music inform how you practice medicine? And is there a relationship?
Well, let's not bite off too much, but they do. So Shakespeare once said the world is a stage, and I would agree that there is some commonality between practicing medicine and playing music in that uh, you're you're in the public's eye and you are presenting something. And in medicine, it's you need to present yourself as professional, as honest, as caring. Uh, but you're a scientist. You need to extract information in a very limited period of time and come up with a hypothesis of what's wrong. And compositionally, when you put together that kind of story, kind of reminds me of the discipline it takes to sort of sketch out a song, outline it, fill in the major points, the subplots. What is the take home message? And so, sort of closure on a visit and putting together a song and producing a song, they're kind of similar in their own way. I'd say the effect that the music has on practicing medicine is be patient. You can't rush things. Uh, the patient will tell you what's wrong with them, and just present it in a way that you are not over the head of the patient and include them in the conversation. And the same
Mhm,
way where the medicine uh, impacts the music, um, a lot of music is scientific. So
mhm.
it's thematic, it's formulaic. There's There's logic to it. I wouldn't say that you can design a song or create a band purely on the basis of some sort of numerical formula, but at least going in knowing what your project should look like. Medicine helps organize your mind around that. So when you approach a band, you want to make each band member be the strongest they can possibly be, show off their talents.
Mhm.
So you need to have a plan. And I think the medicine organizes my thoughts that way.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, music is very mathematical. You said very scientific in a way, in terms of being formulaic. You also talked about music earlier, um, coming from within. So I'm curious because I've seen you perform many times. You're very passionate. You're very in it in the moment. So, what would you say in terms of music being healing?
Well, clearly it's cathartic. Um, you don't recognize that when you're a kid because you basically want to be a rock star, you want to be an opera star, you want to be a lead guitarist, whatever it is. But if you're truly a performer and your take back is how your audience responds to you, whether or not there's a sharing of energies, you get that gratification back from the audience. So once you've had that, once you've seen it, once you've felt it, you need it again. So um, it's like therapy. So you work hard, you establish what your product is. If it's three-part harmony, if it's great lead guitar work, if it's great keyboard work, whatever it is, if that has an impact on your audience, then you've done your job, and then you feel good about the work that you put into it. And you seek that out again. So in a way, it is therapy.
So you need your fix from the energy from the audience.
You do. You can't play in a vacuum.
Right,
You'd be the
right.
world's greatest lead guitarist playing in his man cave. Doesn't get anything.
So that doesn't do it for you.
No,
You like feeding off the energy of the audience.
you have to play out.
Yeah. So how do you balance that? Because you have a band, another band. So it sounds like you pretty much have always had a band since college. Yeah.
There was a period of time when my daughter was younger that household chores and parenting, going to all those lovely parent teacher conferences and being a soccer sideline dad and all that good stuff. You just can't do everything. So yeah, I'd say from the mid '90s to the mid 2000s was a pretty dry period, other than just trying to keep my fingers on a fretboard or a keyboard periodically. Um, but how do you do it? You just got to make it happen. You have to feed your passion. You have to give yourself blocks of time, and then you have to negotiate. You have to negotiate with your spouse. You have to negotiate with your job. You have to make times available that can feed both interests.
So do you know any of your physician colleagues who are also in bands?
I do. Many,
Really? Oh, many.
many.
So I guess it's just a great way to blow off steam, right?
If that's what it's for, I think there are many reasons to go in. Maybe if you're a drummer and you like to pound,
Yeah.
um, but I'm a singer and an instrumentalist, so I like to interact in both of those realms. But I have two very close friends, one who's a family physician in New Jersey who has played in multiple bands over the same time frame as I, and we've actually played together in the interim. And I have another friend from medical school who is a lead guitarist of a band out on the island who's a vascular surgeon. So we find ways to do this.
So do you ever during the days at your practice like break into song or talk to any of your patients about your music?
Well, I'm asked regularly because the core patients that I've had for a long time know I play in a band, and they'll often ask me, "Well, when is your next gig?" Or, "What are you playing at your next gig?" Some actually come. Um,
Do they? I was going to ask
yeah,
you. So do they come? They're your groupies?
I wouldn't call them groupies, but they do support the band.
Okay. Well, what's your what's your greatest reward with the music?
greatest reward with the music? That I didn't drop it. Like every 13-year-old who gets tired of playing at their guitar lessons or piano lessons, that there was enough in it for me to continue to refine my craft and get good enough to actually play what my ear wants me to play, which would include both writing and arranging, and then also my favorite artists, being able to play what what I hear on the radio by ear is a skill that I don't know that I could do without. So I'm glad I didn't give any of that up at an early age.
So you're able to play what you hear on the radio by ear. You don't need music, or do you read music at all?
I have not read music in over 40 years.
That's amazing. So
I can
you
I can read music, but when I learn a song, I can hear the changes. I can hear the inversions.
so you literally just pick it up by ear, just the feel of it.
Pretty much.
Well, that's a talent.
That's God given.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I mean, a lot of people can't do that. Well, what's any challenges with the music other than just trying to juggle it and fit it in with your schedule and your bandmates?
Oh, I think even if I didn't have anything else on the back burner, staying happy with an ensemble of people, all with their own interests, egos, different
Yeah.
desires, wants, things going on in each other's family. I think it's a major accomplishment to hold a band together, and as witnessed by innumerable bands that have broken up because of disagreement amongst its members. So that's an accomplishment.
It is
Um,
an accomplishment, and you've been with your band for quite a while.
so the Thornwoods have been in existence since I'd say 2009, so about 14 years, with some juggling of members, but pretty much the same lineup since 2010.
That is pretty amazing.
I
And
mean,
and g
the frustrating part is that you'd like to go off on a tangent, and we sometimes call ourselves the tangents because everybody wants to go off in their own direction. Uh, but we collectively do a better job than the government in terms of agreeing to go forward on certain songs in certain directions at certain times and not sort of trample on top of each other.
well, that's a big accomplishment in and of itself because I think you have like what do you have, like 5 members or something? Is it
We're
5?
six.
6, okay. I mean, that's a lot of people to try to get aligned, stay aligned, and navigate differences, and as well as that, I think most of you are working.
Well, not anymore. The
Oh,
band slowly has more on the retired side than not.
oh, okay. Well, you're still working.
I'm still working.
At least for the time being. Well, so you have no regrets about pursuing this, but by vocation, pursuing the scientific route and not going to the performing arts high school.
So there's always some regret. There always has to be some remorse that, well, what if I fully immersed myself in music? What would have I been capable of? And one wonders if the 80s had been as kind to singer-songwriters, could I've sustained a career just as a studio musician or as a writer for other people? But it wasn't. So I can't really ask myself that. The 90s brought in a slew of singer songwriters that gave me faith that the music industry was not completely static in reproducing old songs with inferior arrangements. Uh, so like Sean Colvin and Mary Chapin Carpenter and Mark Cohen and the Jayhawks and a whole bunch of people coming out of the 80s and early 90s have done well to survive now for the last 30 years.
Long time. So it sounds like, but you also recognize and like some performers from the 90s. So who would you pull from there, and who do you listen to today?
Oh well, I mentioned a few of those.
Yeah.
So the female singer songwriters of the '90s have had some great staying power, like Sarah McLachlan,
Yeah.
and Sean Colvin and Lucy Kaplansky. Who have I seen lately? The Jayhawks. And then some other bands that have great tunes, but nobody knows their deep tracks, like Crowded House and Delamitri. But it all goes back to uh, the great Great American Songbook, great standard songs that are built with a great hook, with a message, with a great melody, with a counter melody, with a harmony, something that gets you into that sound. And I think these writers continue to honor their predecessors with the level of their material.
So, what are some of your favorite musicians or favorite songs?
Well, I mean, we could go into the primordial soup of what we're born into. I would say the Beatles was the first thing that made me excited to hear music. So I would say I was old enough to remember Abbey Road as a new album. So when I hear that second side with "Here Comes the Sun," just
Mhm.
blows my lid up.
That's a great way to put it. Blows my lid up. Okay. So, so what would you suggest to someone today, maybe who is also a great scientist and also a great musician? Would you have any advice for them?
And whether it's music or whether it's art, painting, uh, chess, it doesn't matter what it is. Make space for your passion. Don't give it up. Um, I know that people in academic institutions, the threat is, look to your left, look to your right. One of you won't be here in 3 or 4 years. That sometimes means giving everything up in pursuit of your doctorate, your PhD, your thesis, whatever it is. But if within you there's that small little piece of incompleteness, if you don't have that art or whatever it is, uh, give it some space, water it, feed it, make it grow, give it some room.
So just making sure while you're pursuing rigorous studies, because they are rigorous studies and it is very competitive, that folks are, even if it's just a little time every day or every week, where they're engaging in some kind of artistic expression, especially if they have a gift for it.
And the other thing I would say is you can't study more than 8 consecutive hours. So if you do that something else, you're giving another part of your brain some activity which is not competing with the core of what it is that you're also working on. So for me, it would be very easy to escape from a hospital ward if time allowed to go to a practice room of the music building next door at the university to play for half an hour, to finish a lyric, to work on some chord changes, something, and then when that's over, go back.
So you say escape the ward, but so do you do that? Do you do that today in your practice, or you don't probably don't have a chance? You're probably scheduled back to back.
Yeah, no, I don't think that would make sense for me to whip out a guitar and in my office. Uh, but I have been known during lunch to put my headphones on, and if the band is working on a song, go to a YouTube video for 5 minutes and say, "Let me listen to this again and see if there's something I can add to this track that we've not done, that we've overlooked, that will bring this to the audience hook, line, and sinker."
But you're saying that when you were a medical student, you would do that.
I would actually, if I had a break, I finished seeing my patients in the afternoon, but it was before time to check out. I could walk across the building with my beeper on. We wore beepers back then, yes,
Yeah.
and actually go to the piano room in the music school of George Washington University Hospital and work on some progressions.
Wow. So what advice would you give to an aspiring musician?
Wow. So it depends on what that person's passion for the music really is. I mean, if they are 100% in, believe in your talent, believe in your craft, um, don't sell out. You may need to do things to make a living to support your lifestyle while you're waiting for your dream gig, whether it's trying to get into a band or record an album or whatever that is. But don't lose sight of your final path, which is if it's recording your own material or wanting to uh, be an improv musician with a grouping of musicians that you'd like to break into, stay with it, revisit it, reassess, decide if that's still what you want to do. Um, but don't go homeless.
Yeah. That's good advice. So what's your final path? Like where do you see yourself with taking your music? I mean, some of your bandmates are retired. Like where do you see yourself going with your music?
So I'm very envious of the people who have already retired. I've seen in the first year uh, people doing multiple projects. And so I already have this little side project called Triad with a guitarist and a singer that we hope to explore more of an acoustic, vocally oriented version of the full band, which I hope to introduce some original material into, and then maybe some solo stuff after that. I have a
Okay.
treasure trove of original music that the band does not cover.
Oh, wow. So continue to play out, but also do you see yourself recording as well?
I do.
Okay, so I guess we have to like stay tuned. Adam
Stay
Berk
tuned.
and the Triads. So um anything else that you'd want to share with our viewers before we end?
It is possible to do this and make both things enjoyable as long as you don't set them up to the detriment of the other. Uh, you can't be bitter and you can't be angry about either. You have to accept what your limitations are and be honest with the people that you're interacting with about what your personal limitations are.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Well, Adam, thanks for coming on the show. And if anyone had any questions, they can always contact me and I'll put you in touch with them. Is that how you want to work it?
That'd be perfect.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much. Until next time, I'm Suze Shaner with Sage Leadership Strategies and Community Forum. Thank you.